Well, welcome back to continuing the discussion, Exodus chapter 19. Exodus 19 is one of the most important hinge points in the entire Bible. It's the chapter where the people of Israel arrive at Mount Sinai, the mountain of revelation. It sets the stage not just for the Ten Commandments in the next chapter, but for an entire shift in the nature of how God interacts with humanity, from the signs and wonders to covenant and calling. So in today's continuing the discussion, let's explore five key theological, cultural, and historical insights from this chapter that we do. Let's start with the idea of mountains as sacred space. In the ancient world, mountains were widely regarded as dwelling places of the gods. This wasn't just true in Israel thought. It was common across the ancient Near East. The Mesopotamians believed their gods lived in the high mountains to the east. The Ugaritic texts from Canaan, Mount Zaphon, was the throne of Baal. Even the Greeks, centuries later, believed Olympus was where the gods ruled. So when the God of Israel chooses Sinai as the place of his revelation, he's stepping into this shared cultural idea, but kind of with a twist. This God doesn't need a mountaintop or throne to rule from afar. He descends and he comes down. And that's deeply radical. God is not confined to a cosmic palace. He brings his presence into the rawness of the wilderness and meets people where they are. It's a reversal of the ancient assumption that divine spaces were far off and inaccessible. Yahweh comes down in fire and smoke, but he speaks in covenant. It's majestic, but intimate. Now let's dig into the phrase in verse 4, I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. This metaphor is rich. The Hebrew word for eagle is nesher, which could refer to any large raptor, including vultures or hawks. But what matters here is not the ornithology, it's the image. Eagles were known for their strength, speed, and vision. But more than that, they were seen as fiercely protective. Some ancient Egyptian and Babylonian texts even describe mother eagles shielding their young with their wings in battle or storm. God is saying, I didn't just save you, I carried you, I shielded you, I brought you to myself. The language isn't militaristic, it's relational. This is not just a deliverance from something, it's a deliverance into something, into God's presence, into covenant. Now let's explore the phrase kingdom of priests and a holy nation in verse 6. In Hebrew, kingdom, mamalekeh, and priests is kohanim. Priests in the ancient world weren't just religious functionaries. They were mediators, guardians of sacred knowledge, teachers of law, and healers of community wounds. God's vision wasn't just to give Israel a set of rules, it was to make them a priestly people, the whole nation that would reflect his holiness to the world. Holiness here isn't about moral perfection. The word kadosh means set apart, distinct, devoted. This was a radical proposal in a world where access to the divine was reserved for elites. Israel's entire nation was to bear divine purpose. That theme echoes into the New Testament, where Peter calls followers of Jesus a royal priesthood. This isn't about spiritual hierarchy, it's about spiritual responsibility. A fourth area worth lingering on is the ritual preparation before theophany. God instructs the people to wash their garments, consecrate themselves, and abstain from sex. Some may misunderstand this as God rejecting physical things, but that's not what's happening. In ancient Semitic traditions, preparing to encounter the divine always involved symbolic acts like washing, abstaining, fasting. Even in Egyptian temple cultures, priests would bathe multiple times a day before entering the sacred spaces. These weren't acts of shame, they were acts of reverence. The body wasn't seen as dirty, it was seen as something needing spiritual alignment. The Israelites are being invited to orient their entire beings, their body, their soul, and schedule toward God. That's something I think we can still learn from today. Sometimes we rush into our time with God, distracted by disorientation, and disoriented. What if we took time to prepare our hearts, even symbolically, before seeking Him? Finally, let's talk about the boundaries around the mountain. The command that no one, even animals, could touch the base of Sinai or they would die may feel a little harsh at first glance. But within ancient culture, it reflected a profound sense of the sacred. In Mesopotamia, temple complexes had progressively holier zones: the outer court, the inner court, and the sanctuary, each one more restricted than the next. What we're seeing at Sinai is the same principle applied to geography. The mountain becomes the temporary sanctuary, the foot is like the outer court, the summit is where Moses meets God, is the holiest of holies. This isn't about exclusion, it's about the staggering reality of divine holiness. It was to impress upon the people that access to God is not casual. It must be approached with reverence. This whole chapter is a tension between God's desire to dwell amongst His people and the danger of treating Him lightly. And yet, despite all the smoke, the fire, and the warnings, God is drawing near. He's doing something no other God of the ancient world would dare to do: reveal Himself personally, not just to a king or a priest, but to a people. And that leads us to the beautiful paradox at the heart of Exodus 19. The God who is untouchable chooses to touch human history. He doesn't stay on the mountain, He descends, He speaks, He invites. The Israelites tremble not because they're terrified of a tyrant, but because they are face to face with a holy love so powerful it shakes the ground. Sinai teaches us that true worship is a blend of awe and affection, of trembling and trust. When I reflect on this chapter, I'm reminded that reverence isn't outdated, it's essential. But so is relationship. God doesn't reveal Himself at Sinai to intimidate. He reveals Himself to initiate covenant. And that covenant, rooted in deliverance and love, still echoes across generations to us. Maybe that's the challenge for us today, to remember that we serve a God who is both consuming fire and tender Father. A God who invites us to prepare, to pause, to draw near, because He already came down the mountain first. If this stirred something in your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What does holiness mean to you? What does it look like to prepare your heart to meet God? Thanks for going deeper with me today. This journey through Exodus is just beginning to unfold, and we're standing on sacred ground together. Thank you for continuing with me today with this chapter, and we will see you tomorrow in the next chapter.